Alright, here's the introduction to the product rule video. The most important thing to know about the product rule is what the product rule is. That's this formula right here. There's a lot of ways to come up with this formula. Unfortunately, most of them are pretty complicated. The simplest one comes using a technique called implicit differentiation. However, unfortunately, you usually don't learn that until later on in the class. You learn the product rule earlier. So what I'll do is for now just leave this formula. You can kind of take my word for it. And then when we learn implicit differentiation, that video will be posted later, I will show you how you can come up with this formula pretty easily out of implicit differentiation. But for now, just take this formula. Believe me that it's true. Make sure you memorize it because you'll use it a lot. The times that you use it is when you're trying to take the derivative of two functions multiplied together. In other words, the derivative of a product. If you know the derivative of each of those two functions, then the way we can find the derivative of their product is just by applying this rule right here. So more specifically, what I mean is, assuming that we already know the derivative of x is just 1 and the derivative of e to the x is e to the x, we can figure out what is the derivative of x times e to the x just by applying the product rule. To get this to look as much like this as possible, maybe we'll call this x right here, we'll call that f, and e to the x we'll call g. That way it'll match up with our formula over here. Might even be worth writing these off to the side so that we can keep track of all our different pieces. We know that f is equal to x and g is e to the x. And since we already know the derivative of these more simple functions, f prime being x and g prime being e to the x, we have all the information that we need, everything that's on the right side of this equation here, to figure out what this derivative is. So if we write out the formula, we have the derivative of x times e to the x, I'm trying to write this to make it look as much like this as possible, is equal to f prime, 1, times g e to the x, plus g prime times f, and this is our answer. Maybe not a bad idea to simplify this guy a little bit. You could pull out an e to the x from both terms, but really these two are equivalent, whichever one you prefer. And that is how you use the product rule. A quick word of caution, the most commonly made mistake that I see is ignoring the product rule, seeing something like this, and thinking that the derivative would just be e to the x, right? Because the derivative of x is 1 and the derivative of e to the x is e to the x. And you might think that the derivative of a product is the product of the derivatives. It's not. The derivative of a product follows the product rule. So be careful about that.